Hi, everyone, and welcome to Oscar Wilde, a podcast about film, always counting down to this year's Oscars. I'm Sophia Simonello,
And I'm Nick Rohrkraut.
and today we are joined again by our special guest, Bennett Prosser, to discuss the Oscar nominations that just came out this morning. We'll be going into the good, the bad, the chaotic. But first, welcome back, Bennett.
Hey, guys. Merry Christmas, and thanks for having me. I got a text reminder this morning during the nominations from my acupuncturist saying that I had an appointment this afternoon. And I was like, both, thank you, I will need it, and not now, I will talk to you later. So hopefully we can get rid of any stress that I might have via our conversation today, and I can just cancel that appointment.
Stress from the past weeks, months predicting, and this morning was definitely some relief. Yes, I think we had some crazy nominations too, but we expected that as always. I was fairly happy overall. I know we have some snubs that we'll go over, but generally in a good headspace. How about you guys?
Overall, I was pleasantly surprised with these nominations. Most of the ones that I was really worried might happen didn't end up happening, and some of the surprises ended up being good ones. So we'll get into what I mean by that, I think, a little later on. But yeah, just a very long season. So I was very happy that we finally got these nominations this morning, and now we have 6 more weeks.
6 long weeks as the snow thaws and we approach summer of really the longest season, I don't know if ever, but definitely of our lifetimes, or at least of our Oscar awareness. So yeah, I'm excited for this period to be done, but it's going to be a long month and a half ahead.
At least out of all of this, Parasite has been, I think, the longest running Best Picture winner.
Yeah.
Not
Maintaining
a bad
the
thing.
mantle. Yeah.
So let's run through the nomination tallies. So Mank led the way with 10 nominations, which I think was what we were expecting, a good size haul for Mank. And then we had a number of films, 6 films actually had 6 nominations each. So The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Minari, Nomadland, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. Then we had Promising Young Woman and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom with 5. Soul with 3, and Tenet with 2. So looking at this group and thinking about this year, is there anything that stands out to you guys about some of these movies or some omissions maybe? What do you think?
I think the first thing after hearing this list read out is that the top 8 were the Best Picture nominees. We expected Mank to have the most. I had it getting 13, so it didn't end up getting everything that it could have. It didn't get visual effects, original screenplay, or film editing. But I think overall it was pretty loved among the guilds, just maybe a little less so than we had initially expected.
Yeah, I think Mank's an interesting one where we saw it picked up a lot of the crafts that we expected it to, but still missed in some of the kind of major categories like film editing and screenplay, like you mentioned, that are usually for a nomination leader like that, usually kind of the hallmark of a film that could win Best Picture or has a better shot at it. So for Mank to be kind of the far and away nomination leader, but still not get those kind of more major kind of prerequisite nominations is a little surprising.
Yeah, and then thinking about the calendar too. So some of these films, like if we think about Minari and Promising Young Woman, I know we've talked about those. They came out last Sundance, and this year we had this big long extended window, and I think we all wondered what that could mean for this year's Oscar season. And it turns out that really only Judas and the Black Messiah was the late breaker to get into that Best Picture lineup. What do you guys make of maybe changes to the calendar, or if we even needed the extended window?
So I don't remember exactly when the Academy made the decision to push the eligibility window and nomination and ceremony dates, but there's some credit that I give them in that they couldn't have known that even a ceremony in April was going to be just at the wrong date, like too early for everyone to be vaccinated and things to be back to normal and we're back to a full typical broadcast, and a little too late in the year for just the amount of time that we're waiting for it and how long this season feels. But I do think that not much came out of pushing the window, except maybe more time for them to figure out the ceremony and how to do the broadcast. Obviously, Judas and the Black Messiah was one that came through, but I wonder if the eligibility window had not been pushed, if Warner Brothers and Shaka King and everyone involved in that project in post-production still could have made it out and finished it in time, even if the window didn't delay, or they would have just held it for maybe the fall festivals this year. So I think that's the only one, that and Andra Day getting the nomination for Billie Holiday, but I think same situation, that maybe the studios would have just changed when they released it if the eligibility window hadn't changed.
Wasn't Judas supposed to come out last spring or no?
It was initially scheduled for August 2020. So it would have been late summer, early fall.
Okay.
I think my one comment on the calendar here just relates to something that didn't happen that was maybe a little bit expected, was The Little Things being released by Warner Brothers basically at the very end of the window, and being on the short list, having that Jared Leto SAG nomination. So it is kind of surprising that it didn't show up anywhere today.
We're on the same wavelength, because I was just thinking that the scary part about this delay and with the extended window was that we feared that The Little Things would be Academy Award nominee, The Little Things. And now we don't have to say that anymore. It's just The Little Things.
Maybe that's what, other than Judas and the Black Messiah, maybe that's what the increased eligibility window gave us, was fear of The Little Things, fear of unknowns like The Mauritanian and I Care a Lot. And a lot of the winners at the Globes were 2021 films. And we know that the Globes, at least in TV, loves the new and the shiny. So when all of that stuff came late breaking and won there, it just instilled like the fear of God in all of us that Jared Leto would make it, but alas.
So as we go through some of our favorite moments, some of the not so great moments, we just want to remind you that we will be doing and continuing our Oscar Contenders series, where we talk about each of the 23 categories in different episodes. So we won't be going category by category, nomination by nomination. We'll be doing more general themes, but definitely come back for the Contender series to hear more about what we think is likely to win the Oscar. So starting out with the good from this morning, which there was a lot of. In the acting category for Best Actor, we had Stephen Yoon and Riz Ahmed getting in, which is huge. One, because Stephen became the first Asian American to be nominated for Best Actor, and Riz became the first person of Pakistani descent for any acting category.
This was great. Bennett, when you were on for the Promising Young Woman News of the World episode, I just thought to myself, I was like, there's no way that we get Stephen and Riz, like both of them. Especially, I feel like I've just been so burned in the past by the Academy leaving Stephen Yeun out, especially for Burning. It stuck with me, and I was so worried about it this year, but having both of them here, two of my favorite performances of the year, was so exciting.
I think it was really exciting for two young men of color whose stature in the industry have been growing a lot over the past 5 to 10 years, both having success in TV and in movies and kind of appearing in a lot of great films and building their CV, and then finally getting big leading roles that got a lot of attention this year. So I think Stephen and Riz getting in was very exciting and a nice kind of image of where I think looking into this coming decade, kind of what are we looking for out of our actors, who kind of the next maybe like generation of, can be of the people who kind of carry the mantle. Like, sure, Gary Oldman's in there, but let's let's focus on kind of like the younger set coming in is a lot more exciting than maybe the older set that's moving out.
Mm-hmm. And I think too with actors of color, so we didn't mention Chadwick Boseman. I think that's because that to me was the clear lock, I think, for all of us in the category.
Mm-hmm.
But important to note too, a Black actor nominated in the Best Actor category is always, I think, important to point out. And additionally, he is the front runner. So it was good to see him there, even though I think we all expected it to happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another really exciting thing that happened, we had 2 women nominated for Best Director. This was so exciting. Both Chloe Zhao and Emerald Fennell made it in. The total number of women who've been nominated for Best Director went from 5 to 7 today. You now need 2 hands to count them, which is always great. It took forever. And obviously, I'd like to get to the point where it's way more than that, but I think a very good stride. And of course, no Aaron Sorkin. I had this feeling he would not make it in and he would be the one on the outs, but I know we were counting on Chloe, but I'm glad that Emerald got in and it was another woman who made it into that slot.
And it's exciting that if Regina King was close to getting nominated, that there was even additionally a third woman who was truly in the running, and I predicted to get in, and I think a lot of other people probably did too, that it wasn't a limited conversation just to the 2 women directors who did get nominated, but there is also a wealth of those who didn't. I think that's also very exciting. And I am happy that we don't need to pretend that Sorkin is a good director anymore. I hope that his not getting the nomination here is a way to dissuade him from directing his own screenplays. I don't want this to become Sorkin becomes overdue for a director nomination, or like it's his time to finally be recognized as a director. We need to squash that narrative early, and this needs to be evidence that he should stick to writing and have someone else direct his screenplays.
We don't want to encourage him.
Yes. 2 other good categories that came out were the actress and supporting actress categories. I think they both ended up being not really surprises in who made it in. I think especially an actress, kind of the 5 who we all expected to get in did, but I'm not upset about a single one of them. I think that they are all good, deserving, like a real variety of nominees there. And then in supporting actress, as stressful as that category was throughout the season, especially in the last month or so leading up to it, where there were 9 feasible nominees that you just took them out of a hat and you had a case for any of them. I think the 5 that we ended up with did end up being the safest 5 maybe going in, the 5 that made the most sense, and whereas the other 4 were kind of the wild cards that were thrown in just to mess us all up. But with supporting actress though, I think it is important to take a step back and think more about the fact that Maria Bakalova got nominated, an unknown Bulgarian actress doing improv in a Borat sequel. I don't think sight unseen anyone would predict that the Borat sequel would get any Oscar attention, but the fact that she especially would end up getting a nomination for what I think is a really great performance.
So these 2 categories were actually 2 of my 5 for 5s, which was great. Didn't have that many of them, but I think Amanda being in here is actually a bit of a shocker. Obviously a good one. And I feel like maybe she did get in over Dominique, say, because she was in the movie more. And maybe it came down to something as simple as that. But I think with Maria, you're totally right. we looked at all of this before the season, there's no way anyone would have thought, oh, this supporting actress from a Borat sequel, she ended up winning Critics' Choice and is maybe the front runner for the Oscar. Insane.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think just thinking about Maria, I was a naysayer for a while. I kept thinking, like, no, there's no way this can happen. The Academy is just, they're going to return to their roots of voting for women crying in dramas or being a supportive mother. They're not going to go for this unknown actress in a bro comedy doing like raunchy, gross improv comedy, which is so much fun to watch. I rewatched this actually the other day and just appreciated the performance so much more. And we both predicted her on our last episode, but I know a lot of people were still kind of counting her out to the end. And I think either argument makes sense, right? Including her because she has all these precursors, or not including her because you are looking at history. But it turns out that this really was just the first time something like this, I think, has ever happened in an acting category, specifically this one.
That was the mistake that I made. I predicted that she'd miss it, and I was mostly just looking off of history and the trends of the category. But clearly they liked Borat more than I thought they would. It getting an adapted screenplay, it's in the PGA list. That I think if it had not had as much support overall, then maybe I think she might have missed, but clearly it did.
Yeah. And with Best Actress too, I think these 5 were the 5 that we had predicted, but it's a really cool collection of nominees. Like you said, not a bad performance in the bunch. I think that you can really root for anyone to win in this category. And I'm excited to really see what happens, especially with SAG and with BAFTA kind of leading in. I know BAFTA is a little odd this year, very different, but I am excited to see what happens and to see who ends up on top at the end of the day. I really think it could be anyone.
In both categories, right?
Yeah, in both. So for supporting actress, I didn't pick Amanda, even though I love that performance so much in my predictions because she missed SAG. And there was this wild stat about Jodie Foster, aka the Golden Globe winner in the category. And this actually is the first time since 1976 the Golden Globe winner in Best Supporting Actress has missed the Oscar lineup. Again, a strange year.
So another Golden Globe streak actually is with Best Actress. And I've mentioned this before, either Globe Actress winner goes on to win the Oscar. And that's been true for the past 11 years. And then in the past 53 years, it's only missed 10 times. So I think the more recent streak is more telling, obviously. But so that would put Andra Day as our Oscar frontrunner, which is not unheard of.
Yeah. So I've seen it, and I know I've mentioned this before, but she is really good at it. She gives a really good performance in a bad movie, which can be said of a lot of nominees over the years. But I think another thing we do have to consider, the past 2 years in lead actor and lead actress, we've had at least one of the winners be from a biopic playing a musician, and she fits, like Rami Malek, like Renee Zellweger. So it would not be unheard of for her to win this Oscar.
It'll be interesting to see if Andra Day, I believe this is her first film role. She's a fairly well-known singer, but hadn't acted like this before, as the sole nominee from her film without coming in with much of an acting resume. And the film that she's in is pretty much considered to be a bad movie. Even though her performance is great, is there a precedent for all of those qualities leading to a Best Actress win? You know, with Judy, it's Renee Zellweger. That's a different case than Andra Day coming in with Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody that had a ton of other nominations and wins. So I wonder if she wins for this role at this time, then I think it'll be interesting maybe a new situation than we've seen before.
Yeah. And I think too, we'll talk about this on the actor episode when we get into our contender series, and hopefully I'll have more research done by that point. But if Andra Day wins and Chadwick Boseman wins, will that be the first time that both of our lead acting wins are from films that were not nominated for Best Picture?
Maybe.
I'm sure
What
there are some
about-
cases, but both of them.
Yeah. But Andra has acted before. She's been in Marshall,
Oh,
probably very supporting, but also Cars 3. So, the big times.
well,
I
excuse me,
haven't seen that.
She just missed that supporting actress lineup for Cars 3. Cars 3 is better than Cars 2.
I haven't seen either of them.
Don't.
So next up for the good, finally, we saw Paul Raci get in supporting actor for Sound of Metal. Finally. I was very happy
Finally.
here.
I can't believe it happened finally. My one place where I've put him in my predictions, besides Critics' Choice, it happened. I'd been denying him all season. I almost had a freak out and took him out of my Oscar predictions, but I left him in, and I'm so glad that I did. What a deserved supporting performance.
Mhm.
It is what I think of when I think of the category. Someone who he has just a very subtle, beautiful performance. And the second I watched this movie, I was like, oh, in a dream world, he would be a Best Supporting Actor nominee. But when I watched the movie, I didn't think anything or anyone from this movie would get nominated. So this was such a wonderful surprise.
Yeah. I think it's the best of the acting nominees. It's maybe the nicest kind of word of mouth film and performance that just people were talking about how good it was, and there wasn't fanfare around him other than people kind of beating the drum online. But it's, maybe the only supporting actor in that entire lineup. And we'll talk about that later, but I'm really happy to see that he got in there.
And then also, I think a good thing, Minari. So Minari is another film that, on paper at the beginning of the season, I think it had some good buzz early on. Like people who had seen it really early loved it. But to have it go all this way to be a movie about a Korean American family and coming from A24 was just not something that I expected. I think my cynicism got in the way, but a pleasant surprise. Was so excited to see that Emile Mosseri got the score nomination. We, of course, had Best Actor and Best Supporting Actress, Best Director. So many nominations for this beautiful little film.
Okay, so now the bad things that happened this morning. Starting out, we're going to clump all of the shorts together. I had seen a lot of these leading up to today. I wanted to try to predict them. And this is maybe where I did the worst, which was very disappointing. I think there were some amazing shorts this year, and a lot of them didn't show up.
So when I was going through my Gold Derby this morning, I was like, ooh, this is good. Like I have 5 out of 5 here, 4 out of 5 here, scrolling through, like very proud of myself. And then I got to shorts and it was like 2 out of 5. Just absolutely tanked. And I don't know if watching them would have helped me. I usually save the shorts for after nominations when I can watch them all together kind of as a collection. But yeah, not what I was expecting here, just from what I'd read about these.
And Nick, I think you're the only one of the three of us who watched many of them, most of them. So I'm curious from your perspective, were the ones that you predicted that didn't make it in, was it quality that was the differentiator from your perspective, or were there other things that you think they went for that you didn't expect?
When I was watching, I was kind of thinking, okay, what has like the grand essence that the Academy would appreciate? And I think back to some other winners in the past. Availability wise, all of the documentary shorts are available in some form on some platform for free. A lot are on Netflix, some are on YouTube. I did pretty well there. I have a few favorites of mine.
Yeah, so I guess since Bennett and I haven't seen them, I'm wondering like what is bad about these nominations?
I think just some of the snubs, like when they listed the animated shorts, I was like, okay, I know what they want to say first. And they said Burrow, which totally threw me off. They picked the Disney Pixar short that wasn't out, and that is really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And then with some of the live action ones as well, I had expected different choices. I didn't like some of them. We can go into the letter room once we talk about this on our contender series, but in terms of big actors which don't necessarily show up here, and they don't either show preference for, having Tilda and then Oscar Isaac and Alia Shawkat with an inferior story, in my opinion, or at least a story that their performances deserved more from. That was just where it was really bad to me and disappointing. I know these aren't necessarily the first films that people go and like, oh, I'm going to go to the theater and watch the collection of short films nominated for the Oscar. But I think that they should have a separate collection of the ones not nominated this year because they are noteworthy. And it's just sad that they're not going to experience the audience that I feel like they deserve.
So another big miss was Delroy Lindo in Best Actor. I mean, he didn't have any precursors besides Critics' Choice. So it was a little predictable. But I know, Nick, you had hope. And this was a great performance. And I guess I just couldn't imagine someone looking at their ballot and not picking him. So I was really surprised. And then thinking of Netflix and their strategy and just pushing the Five Bloods to the side, its only nomination was in score, which was super surprising to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have it getting any, but that was not the place I expected it to maybe pick up one.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to think about Netflix's place in all of this and where they choose to put their dollars for campaigns.
Yeah, I had hoped until the very last minute that there was a possibility for Delroy. And I think he is, at least for me, the biggest snub of any nomination announced today. And then what you said about Netflix's campaigning and marketing, I think that'll be really interesting to see, like, if they really fight for Amanda or what technicals they really go for, and if it pays off this year or if it doesn't, like last year. And I think a big one here that didn't do as well as maybe we had expected, but not wanted it to do well, so I think it's fine, is Trial of the Chicago 7.
Yeah, Chicago 7, I think what disturbed me most about this was that it showed up in good categories like editing and cinematography. Yes, Hear My Voice showed up in Best Original Song, but I think, if we compare it to Mank, like Mank had these nominations in costume design and makeup and hairstyling, but Chicago 7 got really good things like screenplay and editing and cinematography. Those are big deals. And we can't ignore it. I think that Nomadland, while it's kind of out front, I think Chicago 7 still has some good ones lined up. And I'm curious what Netflix will do.
Yeah, this is definitely in the bad category. At least it didn't get more craft nominations that I think it could have. Some places like production design, something that it could have gotten in, and some more just kind of the scale of the film, I think lends itself to potential a lot of craft nominations that it luckily didn't get some of the others. So at least its tally was capped. But yeah, the 6 is too much. I did want to, Nick, I'm curious about your feelings of Trial of the Chicago 7, because when you first watched it, you put a solid 4.5 stars on it.
Yeah.
On Letterboxd.
Really?
And I don't know. I know we all have different rubrics for what you star ratings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious if, one, I can call you out, and two, you can defend yourself. How did this tune change about your opinion of it?
I feel like I gave it 3.
I gave it 1.5.
I mean, that's fair.
Again, different rubrics. Like if you look at if you look at all of our like charts, the two of you are like 4 seems to be like the kind of like focal point, and it's harder to move away from that.
Yeah.
But I'm like I'm a real hill.
Yeah. I rarely give out 5s, but I also like don't give out a lot of 2s and 3s. Like I give out a lot of 1s or 1.5, and then 4s and 5s. Maybe I'll re-rate some of my Letterboxd movies.
I made myself a little like rubric for them, so they'll have.
I love that.
I don't know.
So I did give this a 4.5, and my reasoning, which I've definitely said on some previous pod, I don't remember which, but was like, oh, I was really into it. I kind of disregarded some of the wild script references, mentioning getting an Academy Award as like Sorkian in nature, and like, whatever, it's fine, keep going, because there was good intensity and thrill. I watched it again. I gave it a 4. I did downgrade because I do think the editing and other elements, they are good, and certain performances are well done. But this also came before I saw Mangrove, and Mangrove is 100% the better version of this film that I did give a 5. So my rating system is not flawed, just maybe my mind was when I first saw Trial.
So putting it, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Kind of putting it in contrast to what it could have been, should have been, maybe showed a lot more of the flaws that you've
a little bit. Some of that script on second watch was like, we absolutely did not need this.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. And obviously a lot of people loved it, even people not in the Academy. So I don't mean to attack your love for it. I'm just curious what changed for you.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I think my thing with Chicago 7 is that this year, I just don't have any movies that I'm like angry are nominated. And every other year, I have films where I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, how did this movie get so many nominations? And to me, Trial of the Chicago 7 is just kind of like basic, and it's just like fine. I mean, there are certain elements to it that are bad. Definitely. I personally don't like the editing. I think it's very by the numbers and choppy, but I feel like it's kind of harmless compared to some of the ones we've had in the past, like Green Book or Bohemian Rhapsody, that I was just like, I can't be here. I can't watch this anymore. It's not a good film. And to me, it's the weakest of the bunch, even though it's kind of out front, but it's not a big villain to me, as Hunter Harris would say.
It's definitely one of the showier film editing nominations. So I get that.
Okay, so let's move into the chaotic. The first category being Best Supporting Actor, which I think it's safe to say none of us were 5 for 5 on.
I don't think anyone in the world was 5 for 5.
It really was that 5th spot. I made it 4 for 4. I was like, okay, who's it going to be? Just waiting to see, and absolutely did not expect Lakeith Stanfield to be there.
So when we were at that point, we passed over Alan Kim, and I was like, okay, that's not happening. We pass over Jared Leto. I'm like, yay, great. Don't have to worry about that anymore. And so then I was like, oh my God, David Strathairn, it's happening. This is what it is. Like, I would love that. And it was not. And Lakeith Stanfield is an amazing actor. Warner Brothers just didn't run him in supporting, which is why I think it's in the chaotic category for us.
For sure. Yeah, that the 2 leads of Judas and the Black Messiah are both nominated in Best Supporting Actor. I'm okay with the larger ensemble having all of their actors end up in the supporting conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But to have two clear leads, two titular roles, both end up in supporting, one of which, like you're saying, wasn't even campaigned there. Where was the swell of people deciding to vote for Lakeith in supporting? There wasn't even a narrative of saying that he, even though Warner Brothers is campaigning him in lead, he's definitely supporting, so let's all vote in supporting. I'm thinking of like Keisha Castle Hughes for The Whale Rider, who was pushed in supporting, even though it was the clear lead of her film. And even though she was campaigned to supporting this back in the early aughts, the Academy nominated her rightfully in lead. It's kind of like the classic example of the Academy righting the wrongs of a campaign for category fraud. But this is the opposite, where there was no need for category fraud here. There was already category fraud with Daniel Kaluuya in supporting, but I am okay turning a blind eye to that, but I don't know if it is better or worse that they're both in supporting now. Because is it double category fraud, or is it okay because now they're on the same playing field? I lean towards double category fraud.
Are they supporting solely based on numbers? Because according to Matthew Stewart, who calculates how much an actor is in each film, going back in history and talking about category fraud, he stated that Lakeith is in the movie for 49 minutes at almost 40%, and then Daniel is in the movie for 46 minutes at under 37%. So is it like being under 50% means you're supporting? I know that's not the case.
I think the Academy has a bigger problem here, which is that Black actors never get nominated in lead categories. Like, it rarely happens. Like, most of the nominations for Black actors and actresses are in the supporting categories. And that's where most of the wins come from too. So if you think of like Mahershala Ali, he has 2 Oscars. Both of those are for Best Supporting Actor. So I feel like the Academy has a real problem here, and they relegate Black actors to the supporting categories. And, I would love to know how this happened with both of them getting there, especially Lakeith, because he wasn't campaigned there. But I know that's a troubling reason or suggestion to make, but based on the past, that's what I would guess.
I know you'll definitely get into it more in the Contender series, but I wonder now if having Lakeith in the category is going to be detrimental at all to Daniel Kaluuya's campaign. If there's any threat of splitting the vote now that Lakeith is there to siphon away the Judas voters or anything like that. I think that's a conversation that no one thought we would be having, but maybe put a pin in that for later.
Stay tuned. I'm scared. No, I haven't.
Yeah. I mean, part of me wonders sometimes if vote splitting is a thing that actually happens consistently, or if some performances are so strong that it just becomes kind of a myth. And I have to say now I am a little more worried for Daniel, especially because I think the shock of the Lakeith appearance in this category definitely creates a narrative and creates buzz for both of them, but now definitely for Lakeith a little bit more maybe. So even with Daniel's previous wins. So I'm very curious to see what will happen in this category. Maybe an Oscar for Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we need to move on.
Oh no.
Yeah, we'll move. Yeah, we're just not doing that.
Chaos. Another big surprise that we put in the chaos category is Mank missing Best Original Screenplay for as we mentioned earlier, a nomination leader, far and away leader, with picture and directing nominations and a real narrative behind its screenplay, written by Jack Fincher, David Fincher's father. He wrote it before he passed. And there was a real kind of story behind the writing of this film and how it led to the film's creation and why it was such a personal project for David Fincher, that it missing was a big surprise. I think it was one of the front runners in the category. Maybe Sorkin now just sails to the wind, but I think for me that was my biggest surprise, at least the biggest surprise omission of the day.
And I think if I were David Fincher, out of all the nominations for a movie that I made, I would want the one to be for my late father. And I feel like that has to be so heartbreaking to see this not happen.
And it's definitely had other nominations through the season, but there's some, like, it wasn't eligible for WGA, so there are also fewer awards to fall back on, you know, even as a compensation for it. Compensation.
This one made me really sad. Again, as the Mank person, I really like the script, and I feel that David Fincher never makes sentimental movies like this, or movies that aren't these like dark thrillers about these really disturbed characters. And this was a movie that was different than anything he's ever made before. And a part of that, I mean, a huge part of that is because the script was his dad's, and he set out to make this as this passion project for his dad. And I watched the interview with him and Ben Affleck that I highly recommend, the Directors on Directors, which is hilarious also because of Ben Affleck and Argo, but in that notorious Oscar morning miss. But he talks about how he had to, you know, rein in his dad's script, how he added so many of those little like flourishes of the characters introducing themselves to each other so that we would find out who they are, like in the writer's room and things like that. And how it was this really important project for him. So I completely agree. I was very surprised and saddened to see its miss here. So I think a chaotic category was definitely international feature. Some films popped up that at least I didn't expect here. I think that we just had Collective, which made another appearance that you'll talk about soon, Quo Vadis Aida, which I still need to see, and Another Round. So neither of us predicted Better Days or The Man Who Sold His Skin, but now I'm really excited to watch these. The reason I think it might be chaotic is because across the predictions that I read, I didn't see any other prognosticators or pundits picking these 5. And I also think that with the Vinterberg nomination in director that came up, this gives Another Round a big boost in this category. And I maybe thought it was a little tighter before these nominations came out this morning.
Yeah, we have been big proponents for Collective, and I still will be. And this doesn't mean much now, but I almost put The Man Who Sold His Skin in last night. I thought, ooh, this could be a very Academy move. I have seen it, and it's good. We've also talked about how there are a lot of good picks here and in documentary. It's just maybe more surprising because, like you had mentioned last time, how Dear Comrades was on other cinematography lists and other guilds lists, and in potentially following in the footsteps of Ida or Cold War, it is beautiful to watch.
International film, I think, was hard to predict, largely because of the lack of film festivals last year. At least that's what I thought. I think in my kind of watch list for the year, I had far fewer films outside of the US and outside of the English language that were kind of put in front of me with a lot of reviews and a lot of like, this is the big breakout of this fest. And I feel like at Cannes or some of these smaller European fests is where I think we get a lot of the non-English language features to kind of watch out for the year. So it was, other than maybe 3 of them, I think it was really kind of random for the rest of them of who might get in. And obviously like the 2 Better Days and The Man Who Sold His Skin were just the two who made it in. So I'm excited to see them, especially I'm excited for Better Days. I was in Hong Kong like a couple years ago, so I'm excited to see Hong Kong.
Cool.
I am happy that the documentary short about the Hong Kong protests got in. It's called Do Not Split. Recommend that. Again, it's free. But more importantly, in this category, Tunisia and Romania both had their first nominations, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Romania and the past 10 to 20 years of the Romanian new wave coming through, and a lot of great films coming out of Romania that have, I think, made the short list a few times, but never made it to the actual nomination list. So this is really exciting.
Another chaotic category we've been discussing a lot on the pod is documentary feature. I did terribly here this morning. I think it was also difficult because at a lot of different ceremonies, 5 different pictures were chosen. So many of them had previous accolades. Many of them had really important nominations at other guild ceremonies. So it's hard to really say which would finally make it. I'm just surprised the emotional picture about an octopus forming a relationship with a human, and then this like lighter 80-year-old Bond mystery infiltrating a nursing home got in as nominees.
And I, talked about like Time. I was so scared that Time would miss because Time was my favorite doc of the year, and that sometimes happens. But I thought Time and Crip Camp might miss because usually they don't like archival footage in this category. So I was like, oh, maybe those will be out. Also, my octopus teacher, I know I put in my predictions, but at the last minute, I thought, oh, wait, they also don't really like animals. They really don't like animal docs. Maybe I should take this out. But all 3 of them, here they are.
Another surprising thing is that neither All In, The Fight for Democracy, or A Boy's State got in. Both of the American political films. Also 76 Days, the one COVID film, didn't make it. So trying to understand where these voters were making decisions, I just can't put my finger on it.
I think the recent trend in documentary feature has been a mix of both getting pretty experimental with kind of artful documentaries that are not there to please a crowd and not following a typical talking head structure. Recently, I'm thinking things like Hill County This Morning, This Evening. I think Honeyland 2 was just like an odder picture for them to choose. That kind of combined with very like simple crowd pleasing, like just the 2 ends of the spectrum. I'm thinking like RBG, 12 Feet from Stardom, that kind of more of a talking head documentary like that. So this year I can see the split in Collective and Time being the more artful, more kind of just less ordinary type of documentary that might get in. I know we're saying that Time counts as kind of archival footage, but I don't think it's used in the way that we see most archival footage like Crip Camp versus Crip Camp, and definitely the mole agent and my octopus teacher maybe being nice, pleasant sits. I have not watched My Octopus Teacher. I suppose I will, but I know it's supposed to be pretty emotional. I did love The Mole Agent. It's small. I think there are documentaries that should have gotten more, that are more deserving of the nomination, but it's really small and really cute. So I'm not upset about that one. But so all in all, I think maybe going into it, I had predicted that with such a great short list of 15 films that we were going to skew into the critically heralded, more artful films. Like, let's get Dick Johnson Is Dead in there. Let's get Welcome to Chechnya in there. But I didn't really consider that they maybe would want to add some lighter fare into there they're watching things during a pandemic and during a fraught political time. So I guess I'll like cry to an octopus or whatever we're supposed to do.
I did end up liking it, and I really, really resisted. So I liked it a lot. I need to watch The Mole Agent still. I know we've also talked about before how this category, the membership has become more international over the years. So that definitely makes sense, I think, with the addition of The Mole Agent there.
So no Welcome to Chechnya at all. It was either going to be here or in visual effects. And it's also really disappointing not to be in visual effects because it has such an important role in that film
Mhm.
and has just wider implications for what's going on in that country and in the messages that the film is trying to say. So that was another big shock and disappointment for me.
I mean, I had Welcome to Chechnya in both categories. I really thought
Me
it was
too.
going to get in both places, and I'm disappointed that it didn't. So I think now, just to wrap up, let's talk about Best Picture. We got 8 nominees, and what do you guys think about this collection as our group of Best Picture nominees?
I think it's a good group. I, again, could have expected anywhere from 7 to 10 of these top scorers this morning. So we obviously, the biggest shockers didn't have Ma Rainey's Black Bottom or One Night in Miami, but I had inklings of thinking like, oh, are there going to be enough people saying this is the number one movie of the year and putting it at their 1, 2, or 3 in their top 5? And that did kind of scare me. I think it's just mostly disappointing because Regina's not there and this film isn't there. But some incredible films. I'm shocked Promising Young Woman is there, or at least the me of October 2020 would be extremely shocked. But we will definitely get into more of this on our contenders pod for the ones that have made it and their possibilities.
With Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and One Night in Miami, I think we agree that they're definitely the surprising misses of the ones that were left off. The three of us were texting over the weekend before nominations and saying just what you were saying, Nick, that especially with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, that we know there's a lot of respect for it, and it got 5 nominations. So there was obviously a lot of goodwill towards it and had been in the conversation for so long. But were there going to be those people putting it as their number one? Were we hearing the love? And I think by extension, One Night in Miami similarly came out the gate as, oh, this is a great movie. Good job, Regina. It has great stuff in it, but it was never on any lists of winning anything maybe as it goes along. So it kind of fell off as an also ran. I think one thing that is unfortunate, when we looked at the SAG lineup, it was great how there 4 of the 5 best ensemble nominees are ensembles of people of color, 3 of them being predominantly Black ensembles, and those 3 films missed Best Picture today. And I think a large part of the conversation with Best Picture that I saw was how Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, One Night in Miami, Da 5 Bloods, and then later in the game, Judas and the Black Messiah were Black-led films with predominantly Black casts, and how great it was that they were part of the awards conversation, that we might have this many films getting nominated for Best Picture that are focusing on Black stories like that. And then 3 of the 4 get left off this morning. So I think there are some trends like that, like Sophia, you were mentioning before, of the Black actors getting relegated to the supporting categories a lot. We didn't have any Black directors get into Best Director, and then most of the films centered on Black stories missed Best Picture that people thought would make it in. So I think there's I expect that to be a kind of a topic of conversation going forward, and maybe to figure out how that happened, because I don't think that was expected.
Yeah. And especially after SAG, I think seeing the nominations there led us to believe that those, at least a good portion of them, would appear in Best Picture. And then when they didn't, of course, it is a little shocking to see. I hope that next year when we have 10, when we have the fully expanded field, that'll provide more opportunities, hopefully, for those films to get in without this weird voting system that they have. Looking at this collection of films, I will say this is the first year in a while where there isn't a single film that I've given 5 stars to.
Mm.
And it's not that I give like every film 5 stars or anything like that, but I do wonder if, like, just looking at these, I don't see a lot of passion for hardly any of them. But yeah, I think that each of these has its fans, but overall, to me, it's a good group of films, but they're kind of in the middle for me, most of them. I liked a lot of them, but there isn't one this year like Parasite or, yes, for me last year, The Irishman, where I'm like, I love this movie so much. I want all of these people to win for this film. This year, I'm just like, oh yeah, like it'll be great when Nomadland wins Best Picture. I did really enjoy it.
Yeah, I have a few
Yeah.
5s, a few 4.5s. So I can wait to comment more. But I think in terms of front runner, really it's just what has been winning so far this season.
Mhm.
And that's where my decision making comes from, not from, oh, I really, really, really love this one movie and I think it should win, because I do like most of these.
But I guess compared to last year, like 1917 was winning nearly everything, but Parasite had so much
Right.
passion behind it. And that
Right.
is not happening this year. Like Nomadland, it's a great film. I love it. We talked about it on our episode how much I love it, but I can't see people being obsessed with the Trial of the Chicago 7 enough to get it over that line to beat Nomadland. Knock on wood.
So for me, this is actually my lowest average rating for the Best Picture lineup in at least the past few years. I think there aren't as many films that I hate on it as there have been in the past. But like we were saying, I like a lot of these films, and some I have a great amount of respect for, but I don't love any of these. I don't have high ratings for most of them. So just looking on average, like usually it kind of spans the range of favorite film of the year or close to it, and then near the bottom, I think this is the case, a lot of middling and under middling for me. So I'm a little more down on this list on average than I think you guys are, but it's okay. I think the pandemic year, I wasn't expecting it to be 5 stars across the board, so
Mhm.
it's all right.
I'm excited to return to all of these. Like I normally do, I rewatch all of them once they come out. So I'm excited to see if there are any that I change my tune on or that I love even more on rewatch.
Yeah, same.
So just looking back overall at how we did, Sophia, you did the best with 75%.
Thank you.
I had like 74.6%. So narrowly, but.
Hey now.
And then Bennett, you were at 71%. So I think of all the years, I think this is fine.
I'm nervous because I'm usually better at nominations than I am at winning, like the actual Oscars. So who knows what this means for my score for those.
I was going to say, I hope
happy with
I
my
do better.
75% today.
Yeah.
I've put a lot. I feel like I put a lot of research into figuring out these predictions and going off of history, and clearly I need to go back and look at some of that again and fine tune my process for next year.
So let's, I think, go through maybe with our awards draft. So not necessarily an update on points or anything, but just some overall thoughts now that we have the Oscar nominees.
I think for me, just most surprisingly, Minari ended up, I think, edging out Mank and giving me more points throughout the season, which I 100% did not expect to happen. I knew Mank would do well. That's why we kind of fought over it in the beginning. But to see Minari do even better is so unexpected, but obviously amazing because it is deserving for all the attention it's gotten.
We should trade, and I can take Mank and you can take Chicago 7 since you love it so much. Yeah, so Chicago
does anyone
7
want
though.
Tenet?
Oh, Tenet.
We
actually both like Tenet.
It's all yours.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Academy Award nominee Tenet. I think with my points, I mean, I'm obviously happy I took Chicago 7. It's just that classic thorn in your side Sorkin movie. It kind of makes me hate myself that I'm like rooting for it to get points sometimes, but here we are. I think my like best thing is that both of my actors got nominated today. It did well throughout the season. Anthony Hopkins and Gary Oldman.
Mm-hmm.
I had faith in the elder statesman.
And I just kind of had a slow trickle throughout the season with my points, a handful of nominations here and there. I don't think really many of my picks were big contenders anywhere. To Five Bloods got a nomination today, Tenet got a couple, and otherwise, you know, I didn't quite read the tea leaves correctly for Tom Burke in Mank. I stand by what I selected it when we did the draft, but I guess my main flex is calling Alexandra Byrne for the Emma costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That was one that's one thing that is held over from, you know, almost a full year ago now,
Mm-hmm.
when the film was in theaters, that made it through it as a prominent craft. So I was happy about that.
So we'll share a full tally of points once we wrap up. And then when we do our recap, we can talk about what we'll do for next award season draft or / if we do it again.
I think we've worked out a lot of the kinks
Mm-hmm.
getting through it our first time. So
Cyber, I think you need more people to do it.
I think so too. I was thinking that. I think we need like at least 5 people doing it to spread out stuff and to make it more competitive at the beginning and to get just like a wider variety because we'll have so many things coming out next year.
Yeah.
So next up, awards wise, we have the WGA, which will be this Sunday, March 21st. We have the PGA, which will be next Wednesday, the 24th. And then we have other guilds handing out their awards every week until we finally get the Oscars on Sunday, April 25th. And so next time on Oscar Wilde for our contender series, we will be talking all about all of the sound categories. That includes Best Original Score, Best Original Song, and Best Sound. And we'll also be talking about Best Costume Design and Best Makeup and Hairstyling. So we'll be going into all those nominees in each category and what that could mean for the Oscars.
I can't wait. And thank you, Bennett, for coming back for another episode. You're not done for the season yet, so we will see you again, but we love having you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm going to go watch My Octopus Teacher now and finally understand what it's all about.
During your acupuncture appointment.
Oh my
Yeah, do you think it would be nice and relaxing?
What a combination. Honestly, kind of.
Yeah.
It's a little soothing. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Stay safe and wear your masks.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Stay safe and wear your masks.